Hello, good evening, good evening, good evening. It's about 39 degrees Fahrenheit, yeah, and in Washington, D.C. And it's actually a warmer day than the past couple of days we've had. The cold has been brutal, trust me. See, I still have my winter cap on. So, and of course, it's been a while I've been here, several reasons. Number one, my laptop has been giving me a whole lot of issues. What can I do? But we're getting there. We are trying to get something much better going so that we can come on, keep producing the videos and sharing our thoughts with our viewers, on the games and stuff like that. And I hope the voice stuff is not acting up because it makes sense. Key voice in my actor. We don't want our viewers saying, your voice, your echo, your this, your that. Please, we're going to get there slowly. So today we're actually going to be going over a game that was played at the ongoing Tata Steel Challenge in, I think it's India. Yeah, I don't know if it's India or Amsterdam, but yes, the Tata still going on. Now, this is the first game that I am aware of. The first game played by the new and reigning world champion Gukesh. This is the first round against Anish, who was the top player, of course, in Amsterdam. This was an interesting game, and it was a kind of a bold game played by Giri also. It's like sometimes I think that, with the title comes the boldness and the confidence. There have been times when Kasparov in the past, plays a regular GM, blunders a piece, It's like he didn't sack it, blunders a piece. And out of fright, the GM was like, wow, am I really a piece up? But before the GM knew it, because of the, intimidation and all that, he lost that game. And I think the same thing has happened to Carlson too. I remember the game Carlson played against Gowan Jones, he was just totally down a piece for nothing. But Gowan just couldn't, you know, he couldn't fathom the fact that I'm up a piece against Carlson, so I'm winning. But he actually lost that game. So this is another interesting game. And why am I saying this? Gary Gukesh made some bold moves in this game that he was just totally losing. So this brings me to the point that chess is not just about theory, and I say this a lot. It's not just about theory. It's not just about um, you know variations and all that. There's a whole lot of psychological aspects in the game chess. And as long as we're human beings, we have a tendency to react to things we see. We're not machines. Like if you blunder against machine, like against the stock, you're gonna just get crushed. But if you can blunder against a human and act like, oh my god, that's the best move you've ever made, they can get intimidated and not know how to go about it. So this is a very interesting case that I'm about to show us. In this game, Giri had Gukesh crushed. He was totally losing. Gukesh was, but somehow he was able to win this game. And another thing I'm going to say is this just shows that with the title, comes the confidence, comes the boldness. You do things people would normally not do. When I say people, I mean even 2,700 players. They would normally not do stuff like that. But anyway, enough talking. Let's get right into this game. Now, this is the first round game at like I said, the Tata Steel. This was a game between Gukesh and Anish Giri. And to my knowledge, this is the first over the board tournament game Gukesh will be playing. So he opens the game with the move knight to f3. Uh, Giri played knight f6. G3 is played. D5. Bishop G2. This is kind of like going towards like you could say it's a king's in an attack because of the G3, Bishop G2, knight f3. You could also say it's the red T because you have the knight f3, although you haven't played the c4, d4 yet. But this can actually lead to so many things, and that's one thing about the knight f3 opening. It's a very universal opening. When you start the game with knight f3, you can end up playing the Sicilian defense. You can end up playing against the Queen's Gambit. You can end up playing against the Queen. You can end up playing against so many things. So knight f3, d5 is played, dc c5, white castles. Now knight to c6. Of course, black decides to just go absolutely to control as much center squares as possible. And of course, this is the this is what they call I think yeah, this is what we refer to as the Tarrasch school of chess. We actually occupy the center squares of pawns and pieces. But the hypermoderns believe they don't really have to occupy the squares with their pieces and pawns. They can actually attack the center of pieces from a long range. So this position is very interesting clash between, we could say, the Tarrasch system of play and the hypermodern system of play. So let's keep going. D4, white strikes in the center. White says, you know what, it's time I have some share of the central squares. I'm not just going to take over all the squares in the center, Mr. Giri. So after the move D4, E6 is played. White, black simply continues with the development of his pieces. Moving the pawn to E6, freeing the bishop to get into the game, also protecting the pawn on C5. He's going to move the bishop out, he's going to castle, and then he's going to just be looking good. So C4 is played by the world champion Gukesh. You know, you might be like, this is a pawn, it's a free pawn. It's not a free pawn. Now, this is for me, I'm just going to interpret it the way I see this move. White is castled. Once you're castled, it's time for you to start some active play. Pretty much you want to attack your opponent's position. And the best way to do that is using pawns. And especially when your opponent is yet to finish the development. Bishop is still on F8, stopping the king from going to the king side, keeping the king safe. So C4 is pretty much saying, you know what, I'm going to engage you before you have a chance of castling and keeping your king safe. So after the move to C4, captures on C4, queen to A4, leaving the pawn on D4 hanging also. But like I said, this is the thing. Black doesn't have the time to start grabbing pawns and then at the same time thinking about keeping the king safe. You cannot do that. So after the move queen to A4, it plays bishop to D7. So that means there's an extra attack on this queen. So you have to do something about the knight coming to D4 because this bishop is going to be attacking the queen. But we can simply take the pawn on C4. And I think, oh, it didn't take the pawn on C4. It says, I'm going to just stick on C5. After taking on C5, anywhere you throw this knight, I'm going to simply snap this pawn off the board, getting off the line of attack, and I'm just good. So D takes on C5, bishop takes on C5, queen takes C4, attacking the bishop on C5, bishop goes to E7, knight to C3, white develops his remaining. One of the other minor pieces is yet to finish development because there's still the bishop on C1. Now, this is something we talk about a lot. In a game of chess, it's very important for you to develop all your minor pieces as quick as possible. What are your minor pieces? Of course, your bishops and your knights. They are the most important pieces when it comes to the opening and the middle game. You have to get all these guys in the game as quick as possible. So knight c3 is played, black simply castles. One thing we can say about the black position is he has all his minor pieces developed. Are they on the best squares? Not necessarily, but they are all developed. So that means from the point they're in right now, they can actually move to a much better square in the future. So after the move castles, pawn goes to e4, getting some control of the central squares, and also keeping an eye on the d5 is a very important move because you know black has the 1, the 2, and white has now the 1, the 2, and the 3. It's so important to always keep control of the central squares. So after the move e4, rook to c8, we have an x-ray attack on the queen. You got to get away from that as quick as possible, otherwise bad things are going to happen. And of course, the world champion Gukesh knows that. He moves the queen to e2, which is a very good square, protecting the pawn on e2, also supporting the rook coming to d1. And after the move, like either bishop to f4 or bishop to g5, followed by rook to c1, white is just looking good. White is looking good. Does white have any advantage? Not necessarily. White is just looking good. So queen e2 is played, bishop to c5, improving the placement of his bishop. Like I said earlier, black has all his pieces developed, most especially the minor pieces. I'm going to say this again. The minor pieces are more important in the opening and the middle game than the major pieces. What are the major pieces? The rooks and the queens. The rooks are like race cars. I was talking about this in the class yesterday. They want to just run down the board. You know, the rooks they don't like to be in constrained areas. They want to just go. So bishop c5, the rooks and bishops, they have something similar in common. They just want to keep going. So bishop to c5 is played, bishop to g5, pinning the knight to the queen. Getting the last minor piece developed, pinning the knight to the queen. Like I said, we have a choice of either going to f4 or g5. But Gukesh said, you know, I'm going to g5. Pawn goes to h6, attacks the bishop. this is interesting. This is to my introduction to this game. I mentioned some things about the boldness. This is what I'm talking about. Now, I have never in this position seen the bishop moving to h4 against a super grandmaster. Ha! Now, wow. I mean, you're pretty much saying, come get my piece. I'm going to have 2 pawns for it. I'm going to have a possibility of attacking your king. But the engine just says at that point, black is just better. Period. Black is just better. Bishop to h4. What's up, Gukesh? Is it the world championship that has given me all this boldness? I mean, come on. Bishop to h4. If you're playing this move against someone in lower, maybe 24, 2500, even the 2600 grandmaster, I'll be like, yeah, he's just trying to body the grandmaster. But this is against Anish Giri. Bishop to h4. I'm sure this game, you really should look at this game and be like, how in the world did I let this guy get away with it? Bishop to h4. I keep saying it, bishop to h4. Because after the move g5, pawn takes, after g5, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, white has 2 pawns and an exposed king. Now, can he do anything about that? I really don't know. But based on the engine right now, the engine says white is just not in a good shape. But let's see how the game continues. So he plays g5. Of course, the guy's like, wait a minute, you're going to give me, I'm going to take it, g5. Knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. So there is a pin. There's a fresh pin. Pinning the knight to the queen. So what does black? What does white have for the piece? What does white have for the piece? White has 2 pawns and an exposed king. Now, you always have to remember this. Whatever advantage you have, if you can't make a good use of it, it's like you don't have it. So there's a pin on the knight on f6 to the coin. So the immediate threat is e5. So we got to break the pin. We don't want that. Bishop pawn push stops the pawn from advancing. And apart from the fact that you're stopping the pawn, you're also keeping an eye on this very important d4 square. So e5 is played, queen to d2. What's the point of queen to d2? The immediate threat is bishop takes, followed by queen takes d7. So now, Gukesh is playing with some, he's trying to, I don't even know what to use. Gukesh is playing sharp. So Gukesh played queen to d2, right? Bishop goes to e7, breaking the pin. Now black can simply move his bishop to either. I actually like bishop e6, keep an eye on this d5 square, and actually off the queen, and then you're just looking good. But I don't see any attack coming on this king. Not when we have all the pieces around this king's position. So Gukesh would have to just justify the fact that he just sacked the piece against one of the top players in the world. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So bishop to h6, threatened to win an exchange. He said, if you want the exchange, go ahead and take it. But wait a minute. Because now if bishop takes, well, it moves the king. If bishop takes, queen can take. Queen can actually take, vacated this file for the rook. And then at the end of the day, you really don't have the attack. So all you have is an exchange and 2 pawns. Is it enough against a 2700? We don't know. It's not supposed to be. But like I said, there is more to chess than just good moves. There is more to chess than just theory. The psychological aspect, and I think Hans Niemann mentioned this some time ago about, his classes, trying to, the difference between a 23, but the way he was able to make a jump between the 2350 and 2500, it's not so much about theory, but confidence. I really believe that in a lot of ways. So bishop h6 is played. King goes to e7, says, if you want the exchange, go ahead and have it. I'm already up a piece. Bishop takes, bishop takes. I personally would have taken with the queen here. Now, this is the reason I want to take with the queen. Now, I want to vacate the d8 square for the rook, 1. Now, if you notice, I have like 1, 2, 3 pieces that I can throw at this king. This king has just 1. So with queen takes, I have queen h4 immediately, right? With the idea of knight here. Or maybe even with the idea of bishop h3. And then knight g4. And then, this king has to answer a lot of questions. But hey, Giri is the 2700, and I'm not. For whatever reason he captured with that, we don't know. But this is another thing I mentioned. There's so much psychology in chess. Don't underestimate that. So instead he captured with the bishop. Now at this point, it's almost even. Black is down, white is down a piece, but the position is almost even just because of one move. So let's keep going. F4. Gukesh is still in the in the mode of attacking. He still wants to try to get to this king, get to this position. Just try to do something. For now, the rook is not doing much. The knight is okay. The bishop, well, he could also find a way to do something in the game. E6, I don't know. I don't know. Knight G4, I'm not sure. But knight G4, bishop C5 looks very strong. So let's keep going. F4 was played, bishop to E6. Now, it's a multi-purpose move. Is that they're trying to trade the queen or trying to get this bishop to a very deadly diagonal, because this king is not going to be looking good here. So when you really look at it, how many active pieces does white have? I can say there's a knight on c3, there's a queen on d2, there's a rook on f1, and there's a rook on a1 is not so active right now, but it can get active if you try to move this rook to either to the d5 or the e5. Bishop on g2 is not really doing much. Bishop on g2 is pretty much like a piece defending the king right now. So remember, black is up a piece. But for that piece, white has 2 pawns and an exchange. So let's see what happens here. So knight goes to d5. I'm just going to throw this knight in there. And any exchange on this knight is going to try to free this bishop a little more. So after the move knight to d5, knight to b4 is played. Now it's trying to win a pawn, because now he has 1, 2, 3, 4 on that guy, and we are just 1, 2, 3. So after the move knight to b4, takes on f4, takes on e5, knight goes to g4. Now all of a sudden, black is getting quite active. White has another pawn, so it's pretty much 3 pawns and an exchange for the 2 pieces. So now, knight g4 is a good move. I like knight g4 because now you have some pressure on some of the squares around the king's position. Bishop c5 is coming, rook c2 is coming. All of a sudden, and I said this earlier, the reason why the sack was made, to me, is an opportunity to attack this king. But if you look at this position, if you look at this game, the question is, who is doing the attacking now? Anyway, let's keep going. Knight g4 is played, rook to d1, rook a to d1. Of course, rook a to d1 makes a lot of sense. Why? This rook already has something going on the f file, but this rook on a1 is actually not in the game. So let's get all the pieces of the game. Gukesh plays rook a to d1. After rook a to d1, king goes back to h8. What's the point of king to h8? Trust me, there's a reason for every move. Probably, I see, knight f6 would have been very nasty, because then I can take twice on d8. You gotta always watch out for your opponent's moves. No matter how stupid or how bad the move looks, just try to figure it out. King h1, what's the point? Getting away from the diagonal. This move kind of makes me laugh somehow. I'm like, what's up, Gukesh? I thought you were trying to attack this king. Now you're playing prophylactic moves. You're playing prophylactic moves. Like, what's up with the attack now? No more attack. Anyway, king h1 was played. Rook to c2. Black is in the driver's seat. Let's break this position down a little bit. The knight is active, very strong knight protected by the bishop on f8. Very strong rook protected by the knight on b4. Very strong knight protected by the bishop on e6. And all these pieces have contact in white's position. What about white's pieces? He has the 2 rooks. The 2 rooks are really not doing much right now, even though it's on a half open file. You really can't put more pressure on this f pawn. You can't do anything about it because I have a bishop on e6 defending it. So how many pieces that are active does white have? Well, then knight d5, yeah. Queen d2, yeah. Maybe rook on d1 because it's on a totally open file. Yeah, open file. I'm not counting it. So, since we don't have pawn, the piece can only move. So rook to c2 is played. Queen goes to f4, threatening. Still no threats here. I don't see any threats here. Now, after queen to f4, black is up by 2 pawns, according to Stockfish. So, and it's not just up by 2. Black is up by 2. So that means white is just losing here. These are the points in the game where I scratch my head like, what's up, Gukesh? So all these stuff you were doing were just bluffing. But hey, if your opponent is bluffing and you don't know how to respond to it, that bluffing is going to become real. So queen f4, black is just winning here. After queen to f4, knight takes on d5. Now, knight takes on d5, yes. Queen goes to f3. Knight takes on d5, queen goes to f3. What's the point of queen to f3? I'm not so sure. Probably trying to put more protection on the pawn on d5. Now, we cannot move this knight away because, of course, the queen is hanging So what do we do here? Queen to b6. What's the point of queen to b6? Queen b2 is possible, right? Uh, Knight f2 is possible because I got 1, 2 on that square. So I can just play knight f2, knight h3, knight f2, you know. Black is looking really good here. To know that, so even think about the fact that Gary lost this game, you know, that tells us something. So queen b6 is played. Now it takes on d5. Takes on d5. So now the position is getting a little bit open up. This bishop is going to have some chance to get to this king at some point. These 2 pawns can be very dangerous. The rook's on the file, something black has to be worried about. But as far as the engine is concerned, this position is still advantage for black. He plays rook to f2, queen goes to c3, bishop to b4. This is where Giri threw the whole thing away. But let's go back. Let's go back and ask ourselves questions. You know, I like to ask questions. And another thing we have to realize is it's a different thing analyzing the game. It's another thing playing the game. You know, when you're playing a game, there's so much going on, so much, you know, nerves and stuff like that. But when you're analyzing the game, you know, you can just take your time, take some sip of coffee and just say whatever you want to say. I personally don't like the bishop to b4 because this is the point. Unless you're trying to force this queen to a square where your queen can exploit it or take advantage of it. Because personally, I would have liked this bishop to remain on f8, just keep an eye on this king, number one. And I really don't see the idea behind the bishop to b4. I don't see. Giri might definitely, if he doesn't, he wouldn't move the bishop to f4. But after the bishop to b4, probably totally even position. You know, the position is totally even right now. After bishop b4, queen goes to c1. Now the queen is renewing a lot of possibilities of coming to say hi to this king. But still, I really don't see a whole lot happening. So after move queen to c1, bishop goes to f5. What's the threat? What is the bishop threatening on f5? I don't see any threats yet, but pretty much just getting away from the pawn that is attacking it on d5. So bishop to f5 is played, queen goes to g5. Tempo. Now you cannot go to e6 because you're going to pretty much just drop the knight on g4. So what are you going to do based on the threat on the bishop on f5? He plays bishop goes to f8. This just tells us that the bishop had no business going to b4 in the first place. Anish, what do you think? That means there was no point for you going to the b4 square. Maybe you're trying to make the move to gain some time. Maybe, you know, we don't know. You know, these are super GMs. You know, anything, many things go to the mind. So I don't know. Now for the bishop to go back to f8. So the question is, why did he go there in the first place? But anyway, you still can't take this bishop because his rook is protecting. Of course, rook takes is going to be suicidal because of knight takes, king takes, knight check, king goes, queen check, rook takes, knight check, and then checkmate. Oops, game is over. So bishop goes to f8, queen goes to h4, check, blunder. Anish Giri blunders. Gukesh blunders, the world champion blunders. You know, the world champion blunders. World champion. I don't know. Queen h4 check, what's the point? Was trying to gain some time. Is there any continuation? You know, if I just move the king to g8, what to do? Probably have another check maybe, right? And what if I move my king to h7? That might not be a good move. What if I move my bishop to g7? So now there are no more checks. You don't have any checks there. So, and I'm just ready to take pawn on d4, right? On e5. So what do you have? Nothing. Because why does white doesn't have anything here? Think about this. How many pieces does white have attacking this king? He has one. Let's give him another one, two. How many does black have defending? He has 1, 2, 3, 4, and the queen can always slide. So you have more that is fighting for you than are against you. So what are we scared of? Another thing that might be a factor in this position is the time issue. So in this situation, after the queen h4 check, Giri complements that blunder with his own blunder, bishop to h6. And of course, he's trying to get his pieces on good squares, but, you know, like I said, another thing we have to realize is the time. We don't know what time situation they have in this period. So bishop a6 is played. Rook D to E1. Queen takes B2, threatening the bishop on G2. H3 is played. Totally lost position again. Another blunder by Gukesh. H3. Hey, Gukesh, I don't know. There's so many blunders. What's going on, Mr. Gukesh? What exactly is going on? H3. Now you're 4 points down against the 2700. But somehow, Giri couldn't punish Gukesh. Now, I'm going to ask a question. I don't understand. Is it the fear of Gukesh, or you just feel he knows what he's doing? We have to learn from this game. We have to learn from this game. It's not the time your opponent gives you a pawn or piece that they really mean it. They might not really mean it, but you just have to find out if they really mean it or not. So H3, a huge blunder. And of course, bishop goes to bishop goes to E4. So pretty much the threat is to take on F1 and mate here. That's the threat. For example, if you take my bishop, I'm going to take check. If you take back, I'm going to mate you on H2. So Giri is still totally crushing here. Why did he lose this game? I have no clue. We're going to have to try to find a way to get across to Giri and just try to ask him, what are the thoughts? What was he thinking about? Of course, I hope he doesn't get upset, but what was he thinking about when he got to this position? This is just totally waiting for Giri. So rook takes, knight takes check, right? King goes to G1, Queen B6. Oh my God. Queen B6. Queen B6. Queen to B6. Now, if knight G4, I'm threatening mate on G2. Boom. You can't take my knight because mate. You can't take my bishop because I'm going to still mate you. I'm sure Gary will look back at this game and be like, man, how in the world did I lose this game? But you know what? We have to learn from our losses. So whatever it is Gary had in mind. But here Gary played queen to B6. Totally leaving the game hopelessly lost here for black. There is no way black would have saved the game after the move queen to B6. And trust Gukesh to get a job done. Queen check, takes back, bishop takes on G2. Now, this is what, I said something about the rooks earlier. The rooks, they're like race cars. They want to just run down the board. Now, guess what? We have very few pieces on the board. The bishop and knight have no match against this rook in very open positions like this. So, knight goes to H, up to D3, attacking the rook. Rook checks. King has to come up to H7. Pawn push. Oh, now we have a very dangerous pass pawn here. And you know what you have to do when you have a pass pawn? You have to blockade the pass pawn. If you can't blockade the pass pawn, you might as well just forget about it. So knight goes to be C5, trying to stop the pawn from going all the way. He says, I'm going to attack that knight because I'm really, really a greedy guy. I'm not even going to try to protect and push. I'm just going to attack that knight, force you to move that knight. He says, well, I'm going to move the knight anyway. And he says, guess what? I'm going to attack the knight again. So it's not just about hitting this knight. I'm hitting the pawn on F7. I'm hitting the pawn on B7. I'm hitting everything pretty much. So what do? He says, well, this is the time I'm just going to have to call it a day. And I bet you Giri was very upset because of this game. Very interesting game played by the world champion, Gukesh. And this, like I said, this was his first game that OT over the board that I know of. I don't know if there's any, I don't know if there's any other game, but this is his first game back from being the world champion. So very interesting game here, and a very bold game also. Like I said, I don't know, maybe with the title comes some extra confidence. I don't know, because I've seen this happen with Kasparov. I've seen this happen with even Anand. I've seen this happen with Magnus Carlsen. So here is Gukesh also saying, you know what, I'm the world champion now. I can do whatever I can. Okay, guys, I know you all miss me. I miss me too, Like I said, it's been a while I've been here. But we are going to definitely pick up the pace of the videos we are showing you. Please watch the game. Watch the game. Your comments are welcomed. Critics welcome also. Whatever whatever you need to share with us, we'll definitely appreciate that and move with that. All right. Thank you all. This is Dapsy Chairs again. Hope you all having a nice weekend. Take care. God bless and see you soon. Bye for now.